Okay, I'd like to thank y'all for coming out tonight. The goal of this roundtable discussion is to have a real dialogue between some voters and candidates. Everybody here is going to get a chance to speak and take place in the conversation, and hopefully we'll have some good questions and good feedback tonight. I'm going to ask everybody to be honest and respectful and listen carefully. This is not a debate, it's a learning experience. Hopefully we'll get to learn some more about the candidates, and the candidates will get to learn some more about the voters. My job as the moderator is going to be to keep things moving along, keep an eye on the time, and prevent any one person from monopolizing the conversation. And from time to time, I may ask some follow-up questions. We'll start out just by going around the room and getting a brief introduction from everybody. If you could just explain, tell us a little bit about who you are and tell us why you're here. So for the voter panelists, that would include why you decided to take part in this roundtable discussion. And for the candidates, that would include why you decided to run for office. And
my name is Brenda Bagley, and I've been in LaGrange all my life. My parents and my grandparents also were, and I believe that I have an obligation to try to make sure that the people that are our leaders in government are the best that we can possibly be. Because if we sit home and don't get out and get involved, then we get what we deserve. And I want to make sure that we get better than what we deserve.
thank you.
My name is Wendell Clark. I'm recently new to LaGrange. I've been here for 2 years. This is my first general election. And the reason I chose to sit on the panel is to get a chance to get to know the candidates. I don't know either of you personally, know very little about your history other than what I've read in the bios. And I want to be an informed citizen and make the correct decision. So this is my chance to be involved and to ask you questions that are on my mind.
Mr. Bryant.
I'm Clay Bryant. I am a candidate for sheriff of Troup County. I'm a lifelong resident of Troup County. Been involved in law enforcement or justice-related, or in the justice-related field for about 30 years. I offer my candidacy as sheriff of Troup County. I feel that I bring a lot to the table. I hold a law degree. I have a strong background in criminal investigation. My career started off with the State Patrol in 1973. From there, after my father passed away, they offered me his job up in Hogansville, and I stayed there for 11 years. And currently, I'm with the Georgia Public Defender Standards Council, and I do criminal investigations for them now.
Thank you.
I'm James Woodruff. I'm a lifelong resident of Troup County. I decided to run for sheriff. I've dedicated practically my entire adult life to law enforcement and to serving the people of Troup County. I have worked at the sheriff's office for 20 years. I've held many positions there, including chief deputy, jail administrator, been a patrol deputy, been a jailer. So I know the ins and outs of the sheriff's office. I know how it operates. I know about the budgets. I know about everything that has to go on behind the scenes to make Troup County a safe place. And that is my commitment to the voters of Troup County, that if I'm elected, I want to make Troup County a safer place to work, raise our families, and just enjoy life.
Thank you. Like I said, the goal of this is to have a real dialogue, a real conversation. So if you have something you want to say, if you want to jump in with a comment or question, feel free. Just try to be respectful and not cut off anybody else. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to the panelists and ask what questions you have for the candidates.
Okay. James, I'd like to start with you.
That's all right.
Sheriff Turner used confiscated drug money to help offset his operating costs. It's been reported in the newspaper that he is being physically irresponsible in his management of Troup County's funds. There are some who are feasting and some who are certainly in the midst of a famine. How will you offset this shortfall and keep everything up and running and get everyone on a level playing field? Because in the paper he said, I believe that there was $1.7 million he had in drug money that if we did not re-elect him again, and this is not pointing fingers at the sheriff or anything, this is just his comments, and you know we have to deal with what we're left with. If that money is totally gone and you go in as sheriff, And I'll ask that same question of you after James finishes. What will you do?
Well, what we have to do is first, hopefully he will not spend all of that money because, through the years, that money has been used to offset our budget, to buy things that we need to keep from having to use money out of the budget. However, if that is the case and all that money is used, right now I'm the business administrator at the Troup County Prison. It is my job to oversee the budget. I have done that now for a couple of years there. I know about the budget. What we do is get our budget. We know how much we've got for the year. We divide that by 12. We know how much we can spend in each line item every month. That is my job to keep up with that. Say building maintenance is $50,000 for the year and we spend $3,000 a month. When we get to that $3,000 threshold, it's my job to inform the supervisors that we need to stop spending now, unless there's an emergency. If there's an emergency, we have to borrow from next month, but then we know we have less to use from that. So that's what we'll have to do at the sheriff's office. We'll have to just fall back on the budget like we used to before we ever had drug confiscated money. I have talked to the Georgia State Patrol. They're going to continue to patrol the interstates. There is money that they do confiscate from time to time, and I feel sure that over time we can rebuild that source of revenue to offset our budget. But if we don't have that money when we first go in, we're going to have to take a hard look. And if we don't have the money, we can't buy things. We can't give raises to our officers. Our officers haven't had raises in several years. Now, we can't use drug confiscated money for that, not even to offset the budget to give them a raise. But we'll have to depend solely on our budget, tighten our shoestrings just like you have to do at home when you don't have the money, and just get through that year until we can see what the next year brings.
Thank you. Clay, would you answer the same question, please?
Yes, ma'am. Confiscated money has some very strong earmarks and requirements on it.
All right.
Number one, it can't be used for salaries or for any type of benefits that would supplement salary. It has to be used for capital outlay, for equipment and that type of thing. And what it allows you to do is not budget those things in the budget, and you can spend it at its discretionary money. He can spend it any way he wants to, as long as he falls within the guidelines of the spending. Now, I will say this, that there are creative ways that you can use that money as so to speak, as robbing Peter to pay Paul, to lighten the burden on the taxpayer of Troup County. Now, because that money is what it is, there was a slight, I don't want to say deception, but a misrepresentation of, it was made to sound like that money, our budget would be short because that money was gone. Our budget is what our budget is, and it's already set. Now, it does allow you to spend money. Let's say you need to buy 10 patrol vehicles. Now, what you have to do is have a respectful dialogue with the commission and say, okay, guys, here's something I can do. I can go buy these 10 patrol cars, and we're going to put that, I was going to put that in my budget. Now, if you will do this for me, I will buy those 10 patrol cars out of discretionary money. If you will budget me the salaries of the resource officer at Long Cane and the resource officer at Callaway. And that way I have judiciously used discretionary money to get the things in my budget that I could have asked the county to pay for. And in the long run, they'll end up with actually gaining budgetary money, because I'll spend that $400,000 or $40,000 a piece for those patrol cars by the time you outfit them and whatnot. I put that to go to a line item that I would have had in my budget, but I couldn't use salary from the discretionary spending fund. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
And that way you're able to offset one with the other, and you've done it legally and at no cost to the taxpayer in this county.
But that's kind of the robbing Peter to pay Paul good old boy system that Donnie Turner had that caused a problem in the end, didn't it?
No, ma'am, it's not. what Donnie is accused of doing now is just wantonly spending money so it just won't be there.
Well, see, Donnie's the one that said that, though. I mean, he publicly said that if the voters did not put him back in office, we would be anteing up $1.7 million. I mean, we can't make up what Donnie said.
I think that was, when he said that, I think it was probably in the heat of the campaign, and it was just something saying, well, now that money's there, and it's gonna stay there, unless he spends it. And because the guidelines are so tight with what he can do with it, he's gonna have to be accountable for where it's spent and where it's going. I think at this point, he's bought some cars and done some other things. I've heard he's made some improvements up at the courthouse. And to be honest, I think, to me, I would like to have seen the money stay there for whoever, whether it's myself, James, Reuben, Harrison, for the money to have stayed there and be used in the normal course of business. But it's not within my purview to make that decision, and he can. But one thing I will say this, if I'm elected sheriff, every year there will be a published audit of all discretionary funded money. If it's confiscated money that comes in, there will be a published audit of exactly where it came from, exactly where every dime of it is spent. Now, one thing that, well, and I'm sure that will probably be asked on down into the discussion. There are several things that I think that have gone sorely lacking at the sheriff's office. You know, the maintenance and upkeep in the jail is one of those things. And in the last few months, it's gotten worse. And I think at this point, in the last 12 months, at least 4 and maybe as many as 6 of our jailers have ended up at the hospital being treated for injury. And, you know, there are things down there that just aren't as secure as they should be, and simply because of lack of maintenance and those type of things. And to me, that's inexcusable. You know, we don't, you know, everybody thinks of the deputy sheriffs or police officers out here on the line as being the people that are exposed to the danger. But we hadn't had 6 deputies, line officers end up at the hospital in the last 12 months. So anytime you got, you know, 400 or 500 men basically in confinement, you need to make sure that the safety and security of the people that work for you is catamount, and I don't think we're doing that right.
Do you think you need to add that?
I just want to follow up and say one thing, and I think that's good what Clay said. From the very beginning of my candidacy, I have said if I take office January 1st, I would call for a complete audit. I think anybody that takes office should call for a complete audit just to safeguard yourself, to say everything up until this point I'm not been responsible for, and I don't want to have to answer for, and let any questions that need to be asked of the former administration. I would want a complete audit, and I've always said that I would be completely transparent. I don't want anything going on at that sheriff's office, be it money, be it the way an inmate's treated, be it anything that would not be completely transparent to the public. They'd have the right to call, to come down and sit down and ask questions about how their sheriff's office is being run, because the sheriff's office in and of itself is for the people and by the people. It's not for me. If I'm the sheriff, I'm not the person that it's for. It's for Troup County. And so I want complete transparency there. I think you have to have that to be above board in anything that you do. But back to the question that we were discussing, if that $1.7 million is not there, what we have got to do is just like at home, just like any business, when you don't have that extra funds, you've got to tighten your budget, you've got to tighten the shoelaces, you've got to only buy necessary things, you've got to make the hard calls, you've got to make the necessary calls. Safety of our officers is number one. Safety of the inmates, we have to provide them a safe place to live. We have to provide them medical care. That's the paramount things we've got to do up front. Other things we'd have to look at on a case-by-case basis, and that's one thing when we go into office, we just have to look at and see where we go from there.
Thank you, both.
My question actually also deals with civil forfeiture, but it's kind of a different take on her question. Fulton County Sheriff's Office, and I believe Cobb County Sheriff's Office, I could have the second Sheriff's Office incorrect, just recently settled a lawsuit with the Institute for Justice over Georgia's civil forfeiture laws and compliance with those laws. Georgia is known to have the toughest civil forfeiture laws in the nation. Do you think, as a matter of protection for our citizens also, that there should be a change, and if so, what change to our civil forfeiture laws? Just the way the process, if I understand the process correctly, I've been, she and I own property together.
Right.
I've been arrested, you found drugs in the vehicle, we own the vehicle together. In order for her to get the vehicle back that she has a property interest in, she has to go to fill out paperwork with the prosecutor, then turns around and has to sue the sheriff's office or the arresting county person in order to get that property back. In other words, you're asking two entities that work together on a daily basis to all of a sudden become antagonistic in court over her property, which neither one really has that much interest in. Do you think there should be a change to the civil forfeiture laws? If so, what would you change and how that process is done?
To be very honest, I don't think that there needs to be a change in the civil forfeiture law. What I think there needs to be is a return to common sense. Sometime in the past, we've just gotten totally away from common sense in law enforcement, education, the way we run our families and everything else. I think this, and this has been done in Troup County, I know, from being at the DA's office and the sheriff's office. If a person, let's say, a member of my family is in my vehicle and they get caught doing something that's wrong and I'm not a part of it, it's within the purview of the district attorney and the originating case agency to say, we're not going to seize this piece of property. And I don't think, and this is just, there needs to be an amount of fairness in everything. If it is obvious that all I'm trying to do is to seize a piece of property that's going to unjustly enrich me, then that's not the purpose of government, okay? And I will say this, if that piece of property is being routinely used in the narcotics trade, for instance, I'm all for seizing it, doing everything we can to hold it, and getting the highest dollar in return back to the people of Troup County. However, in a situation where it may have belonged to an innocent, and at some point in time, we have to rely on good judgment and fairness to be the determining factor of what we do. And I don't have any problem saying, wait, you know, this is this lady's vehicle. There's not a true tie other than this is her son or this is her nephew and he was using it. I don't have a problem not, you can seize it, but at any point you can forego the condemnation process, and that's what we ought to do. However, I think the law ought to be tough enough that if you relax the law, it might get to the point where you do not have the power to enact it. But at some point in time, it's a justice question. And we go back to doing the right thing. You know, if you do what's right, you don't have to worry about who's right. You know, and that's the way I feel about it. I think that as a sheriff, I don't want to make a hardship on somebody that has doesn't have a dog in this fight. But by the same token, if I have a relative that I use their vehicle regularly to go and get drugs to bring back to this county, if there's a single tooth for us to be able to bite with to hold it, I'm all for that. And I don't think you can just release to make the law lighter if you may lose some of the control that you would have. But we should surely use good sense and judgment and fairness in trying to seize property.
I have to kind of agree with what he says. I would not be in favor of relaxing the law. I think the law in and of itself is good because it does give us the power that we can seize it. For instance, if you're her son and you've been out and you're buying drugs and you get pulled over, does the law give us the authority to seize it? Yes, it does. But if it's a one case, just like he said, if it's a one case thing where she didn't know you were doing that, you know, she thought you were going to Walmart and you got stopped and arrested for drugs. The law is black and white, but we have to operate in a gray area called common sense many times. Now, if this is the 5th time that we've stopped you in her car and we can prove that maybe she's sending you out to buy drugs or letting you use her car to sell drugs or something, then sure, I think we need to condemn that car, and we need to take that car. But I think we have to look at it on a case-by-case basis and not just say across the board, if you get arrested, no matter whose car it is, we're going to take it. I don't think we can do that. But I don't think we should relax the law that would take that power away from us in case we ever needed to do that.
The feds have the RICO statute that they use, and what it is, if you involve yourself in a criminal conspiracy, any holdings that you have, property that you have, is fair game for them to come get. And I think, I've seen cases where I thought the RICO statute probably was abused, but by the same token, if you look at our society, where we are today, almost to the point where if we can't get some moral compass back in the direction of right and wrong, I don't know where our society's going. And if it means taking people's property that partake in criminal enterprise, we need to do that. We sure don't need them enriching ourselves with it.
And I also have just a quick follow-up question to when you're talking about budgeting issues. It's my understanding, and could be completely wrong, that the county tax commissioner recently transferred the collection of delinquent tax bills from his office to the sheriff's office. And with that came some vehicle and some other funds associated with that collection that's now goes into the budget of the sheriff's office. Are you in favor of keeping that or returning that back to the county tax commissioner?
From the very first day that I announced my candidacy, one of the things I said I was running on is returning the delinquent tax collections back to the tax commissioner. Mr. Ellis Smith, for years, did a tremendous job doing that. I think Mr. Gary Wood, our current tax commissioner, did a good job. I don't know exactly why, how, or for whatever reason that ended up in the sheriff's office. There's many theories floating around as to how that happened, but this is my take on it. There's a company out of Carrollton, Georgia called Georgia Tax Solutions that currently collects those delinquent taxes. Now, in forums before, Sheriff Turner and I have discussed this in front of the people, and he said there's no money going to Carrollton, Georgia. I cannot believe that Georgia Tax Solutions is collecting delinquent taxes for free. I believe there has to be some sort of money. Maybe they're getting a percentage of what they're collecting. I believe that money needs to stay right here in Troup County. We need all the help we can get right here, and if we've got a person in an office that's willing and able to do that, I believe that's what we need to do. There's an investigator right now that was taken out of investigations at the sheriff's office and put in that office up there to check property titles. He needs to be back out on the streets solving burglaries, solving thefts, solving entering autos. He does not need to be up there in that office checking titles on property. We can use him solving crimes. That's what we're in the business of, is solving crimes and not collecting delinquent taxes, even though the law says the sheriff has the right. He can do that if he wants to. I think we've got too much to do to be collecting delinquent taxes. And it would be one of the first things that I would want to do is give that right back to the tax commissioner and use those positions. There's a lady in that office that's the secretary that came over from Mr. Wood's office. I want to use her at the jail. Right now, there's an automated phone line at that jail. I do not agree with. I've said from the very beginning, I don't agree when you call the sheriff's office and you want to ask about somebody that's in jail. They put you through some automated phone line and you got to press 3 for this and 5 for this. I've talked to people all over this county when I've been out going door to door, and they've said, especially our elderly, if they call to check on their grandchild and they mash 5 and they meant to mash 3, well, it sends you all the way back to the very beginning and you got to start all over. I believe our citizens deserve to talk to a real person that can answer their questions for them. I would take that lady out from up there, put her back down at the jail, take that automated phone line out. I'm now using 2 employees for which I think they should be used for, and returning that back to the tax commissioner's office and give him his car back. I understand that his car was taken, or a car was taken where they have to go out and do things in the community. I had no problem giving him the car back to be able to do those services. So that's my take. I want to give that service back to them.
Constitutionally, it's the sheriff's responsibility to collect the taxes, the delinquent taxes. However, there comes a time, and that's historically a responsibility that has come down through the ages that needs to have evolved with the sheriff's office. Number one, the sheriff's primary goal, of course you have to prioritize everything, especially this day and time, there's only so many pieces in this pie. The primary responsibility, as I see it, of the sheriff of this county is the safety and security of the people of this county. And anything that takes away from that he can send another way, I think it just makes common sense that you do. And there was a misunderstanding, I think, when you said that the tax commissioner gave that back to the sheriff. That was not the case. The sheriff giveth and the sheriff taketh away because it was his authority. He had named Mr. Wood as ex officio sheriff, which allowed him to function in the sheriff's place in the collection of taxes. Now, it makes good sense to me that the tax commissioner is more familiar with the collection of taxes and delinquency than I would be as a sheriff. Just as I'm sure that he would not be well equipped to come out and do law enforcement duties as a tax commissioner. Now, having said that, the way that this deal is set up with this crowd in Carrollton is my understanding, is that, and I think what the sheriff meant to say was, this doesn't cost the taxpayers of this county a dime. But what it does do, it adds a tremendous stack of fees and penalties on top of the tax bill, and they get it in Carrollton. Now, that causing a greater strain on the taxpayer that's trying to maintain in a hard time in this financial climate that we have today. If somebody is on the cusp of losing their property anyway, I think we as a government and need to support our citizens as much as the citizens need to support the government. And if we can make it less painful and less expensive to them to keep our tax collection here, I think we need to do that. I think it's always so easy to delegate something away, and if you look at all the things that the state has already given away, that you'll find that private entities come in and create cash cows in those places. And that's what these private collection agencies are. They're cash cows. They don't have anything. You hand them a tax bill and you entitle them to put a fee, a collection fee, plus a penalty on top, plus the interest, and what it amounts to is somebody that may be able to save their home place, their home acreage, their property, that during these times, if they've come under stress, you're denying them an opportunity to do so. And I think that's grossly wrong. Now, as far as the tax commissioner collecting, I think that is the most efficient way for this county to handle that, and at the least expense, and it makes sense. I think it's the way it should be done. And but by the same token, I think that whichever way is the most efficient and the best way, and I would need to look at it before I would say it needs to go either way. I'd want to look at it from a learned perspective and say, this is how it should go. But I certainly see that it makes more sense for it to be in a tax collector.
Sometimes we can just get in the midst of things and we just stir them up so bad we don't use good common sense.
Absolutely.
And to me, good common sense says to let the tax people take care of the taxes and let the sheriff's department be doing what they're supposed to be doing, which is keeping us safe, which is keeping our prisoners. I volunteer a lot within our town, through our church and through different organizations. And I've been working with a young man who is incarcerated at Troup County.
Yes, ma'am.
He has a drug problem, and I've worked with several, trying to see which is the best way to help salvage his family, and his children, and be the least impact. So I've called on him several times out there, and our jail is deplorable, to say the least.
It's an abomination.
And I agree with Mr. Woodruff, when you try to call to get anything, you're on this automated thing. Now, I may not be suitable to run for president, but I'm not illiterate enough that I can't use telephone, and that thing will drive you to distraction. So you finally get through and you find out when this inmate can have a visitor. So I go out and I've gotta go in, I've gotta check in, gotta make sure that everything's above board, which I think is great, as for security for myself and those inmates up there. But then you go up the elevator and down this lovely hall that has a great hole, a dip in it. I mean, come on, you know, on top of the safety feature, you're going down this hall and this hall. And then we get down there and I'm trying to talk to the inmate and I'm up against the wall like this, you know, trying to hear. We got some lady down here that's climbing up trying to put stuff, I think, over. And then, I guess it's, I don't know, it's a fire alarm or escape alarm or something goes off. I'm like, you know, there's a problem here. There's some really bad problems. So I think our sheriff really needs to be concentrating on what's going on down there. And not what's going on at the government center, but what's going on at that jail.
Well-
And to do what we can do to maybe try to deter some of this.
Well,
And-
I totally agree, and I believe this, as a sheriff of the county, and I've heard some complaints from some of the guys that work down there, you know, that, whether this is true or not, I can't say, but I had a guy that his work down there said that he worked in the jail for a year and he never saw it. He never saw the sheriff. I think that's insane. The jail is the largest portion of the sheriff's budget. And one of the huge, by far and away, one of the biggest responsibilities is constitutionally is that he provide for the common jail. And it is a city within itself. And as it is right now, we've got, or so I'm told, in one of the pods in particular, we can't isolate prisoners because electric doors don't work. If plexiglass gets knocked out, it's taking sometimes weeks and months to replace it. And those are safety and security issues for our employees and as well as the prisoners. Now, there is this consideration. Our jail was built for 240, and I think the capacity now is up, they call it about what, 265-ish, something like that, James?
Daily, it's over 400.
No, I'm talking about what they say that its capacity is.
Well, when they built that new pod in the back, that's could hold 120 more people.
But now, my deal is this, though, is the state, I think, certifies a capacity at 265. We are running somewhere between 400 and 500 daily. And part of our problem, and it's, to understand the problem, it's actually a little deeper than just the fact that it's there. We have folks that are in jail, that are under sentence, that the state of Georgia, it cost us about $35, $38 a day, is what I'm told.
I am glad you brought that up. That leads me to where I'm going with this next question.
Okay.
Right
Well, listen,
into it.
wait, I want to, can I
Yeah, go
let him
ahead.
finish that
Yeah.
because I want to respond
Okay.
to the conditions of the jail.
So here we go. We have a capacity, and just slightly over the capacity, we have the people in place to look after 240 to 265. I think we run about 9 people per shift. But we got a daily census between 400 and 500. Now, we charge the city of LaGrange, what, $41, $42 a day to house prisoners there. And anybody that's under sentence that the state has. Now, this is what happens. The state of Georgia gives somebody they stay in our jail for 3 months waiting to go to court. Okay, then they get a 5-2 on a cocaine sale. Well, the state knows that if they get that guy out the day that he's sentenced, or within a day or so, he's going to Jackson, he's going to be issued an EF number, and then they got to send him to a prison. But if they can let him, basically warehouse him in our jail, of course, they pay about $50 a day. But still, it raises our census, and to me, the safety factor is worth more than the money is. So what they'll do is probably somewhere between 50 and 100 folks that are in that jail today are under state sentence already. And the state will let them stay there, and what'll happen is, to the point where they know that if they take them to Jackson, as quick as they go through classification, receive an EF number, they'll parole straight out of Jackson. And they have not had to bear the expense or problem of getting them to a public work camp or a state prison anywhere. And so what we have is corrections kind of our tail is wagging our dog, so to speak, and that's silly sounding, but it's true. We're dictated, as what our capacity will be by an agency that's using us to warehouse folks. Now, they pay for it, yes, they do. But at some point in time, you have to say, well, is it worth it for the safety and security of our people and for the inmates in that jail to have a census that's that high, especially if there are ways to keep it down. And we could do some of that with pre-trial measures and post-trial measures to try to get some of these folks out of jail to where we're not, in medical costs, oh my God, they're astronomical. There are folks that, I've actually had an inmate tell me one day, I don't mind being here at all, I can get my teeth fixed, and it's just, it's a situation where we're getting saddled with the responsibility of keeping inmates. It would be better if we put that responsibility where it is. And I wouldn't have a problem once a week sending a bus to Jackson with the folks that got sentenced this week.
We definitely need to be doing. Do you have something you need to add?
Well, I just want to go back to the jail in itself. Having talked to some of the people that work back there, the conditions are deplorable. I've had people call me home, citizens. I had a lady call me home one night and say, when she was in visitation, she looked up at the ventilation system and she said, Mr. Woodruff, there was black mold
There is.
at the ventilation system. I have not been back there in years.
It's bad.
One of the first things I would want to do is go back there, do a tour, look at the conditions. Black mold's got to be cleaned up for the health and safety of our inmates, for the health and safety of our officers. These doors that don't work. I hear there's several doors back there that they can't even secure inmates in. There is a brand new pod that was built onto that jail. There's 4 sections to that pod. There's only one being used right now, as of the last information that I got, and that's where they house their trustees. Why are we not using those other 3 pods to help ease overcrowding? When you have 50 men where 25 are supposed to live, you're going to have problems. You're going to have fights. You're going to have stealing going on. You're going to have all these other things happening. The question I've got, how are all these lots getting torn up? Are we doing jail inspections every day? Are our supervisors going back there? One thing I would want to change immediately, we've got supervisors in the jail and they work in the booking area. And for people that don't understand, maybe it's a little hard to comprehend, but there's the booking area. When you're first brought into the jail, you're booked in, you either can make bond and go home or you have to stay. Our supervisors work up there, and that's good. But I say, let's put some jailers up there and let these supervisors do some tours back there to see if our guys that are in our pods are doing what they're supposed to be doing. Are they doing their checks that they ought to be doing? How can these doors get torn up, these locks get torn up, these windows get broken, and nobody knows what's going on? Visitation. You're still having to go upstairs and talk through that window. They dig the putty out. You was talking about a lady trying to pass contraband. They dig the putty out so they can slide contraband up around the window to whoever's visiting them. There's a house that is built in the parking lot of the sheriff's office. And this house was the visitation house. I went to Columbus, Georgia, to Muskogee County Jail, met with those individuals down there about video visitation, where they would go into this house. We were first going to put it in the lobby of the jail, which is what I thought should have been done in the first place, so the jailers could watch the people while they're on the telephones talking on the computer instead of putting them out in some house where nobody's going to be watching them and they're going to be drawing graffiti on the walls and God knows doing what. But they built the house, they purchased the equipment, I understand, but they haven't implemented it. You're still visiting the old way. Why haven't we implemented this new system? This house has been sitting out there for maybe 2 years now, and nobody's using it. Why not? So there's a lot of questions that have got to be answered about that jail, but safety of our officers is paramount. We cannot send those jailers back there, those young men and those young women that are somebody's son or somebody's daughter, and say, go back there and watch 500 inmates, 400 inmates, and by the way, the doors don't lock. And by the way, there's probably black mold in the vents, as we've been told. I don't know for sure. How can we do that? We have got to go down there and clean that jail up and make it a safe place for our employees and for the inmates themselves. And that's what I'm committed to doing if I'm elected, going in there, doing a walkthrough, and bringing in some professionals that know if that really is black mold, we've got to get it out. Not just go in there and scrub it out. We've got to get people in there that can tell us if that is, and what do we have to do to decontaminate that jail, and how do we need to spread these inmates out and utilize that new pod, and how do we need to implement this new video visitation system so contraband cannot be passed, just like you saw that girl trying to do. So those are the things that I want to bring to the table right away when elected.
We've just got about 15 minutes left. Ms. Bagley, if you had a follow-up question or if anybody had follow-up comments, and then I'd like to try to get to Mr. Clark one more time and let him ask the final question.
Troup County is spending considerable amount of money to feed these inmates. Would it be possible to use some of these prisoners, these state prisoners, and I'm not talking about those who've not been sentenced, I'm not talking about prisoners who are violent, I'm talking about maybe somebody who didn't pay child support and who just has no desire to pay child support and rather sit out there and let the taxpayers feed them. Get them out of the jail and maybe put some gardens in. They used to do that. They used to have gardens. They used to raise pigs and that sort of thing. And I'm saying use some of that because we use the inmates out on the road. Raise some vegetables, raise some pigs, raise those different things to offset some of the cost.
You want me to go first, Larry, or you want to take?
We need somebody as a sheriff in Troup County who can think outside the box and
Absolutely.
may be willing to
But now,
bring different things to think about it.
here's one thing that, Ms. Bagley, that I believe. Number one, years ago, I was one of those folks, we ate out, if you were in law enforcement, state patrol, you ate at the prison camp with prisoners, and they ate very well.
Yeah, they do.
But they came up with some rules and regulations now about everything that you feed, that they eat has to be USDA inspected and all those things, and opened up a whole nother can of governmental control that strangles the ability to do that.
Maybe it's time we take our country back.
Well, I totally agree. At many different levels, I totally agree.
You're talking about the justice system, and you believe the sheriff's office should be part of the justice system. This is why I don't think it should. I don't think the sheriff's office, the sheriff's position itself should be part of. Look what corruption we've got in Washington, what we've got in our state capitol. We need to leave the sheriff's office alone, where he's elected by the people, from the people, and part of the people.
Well, I'm gonna tell you something. Somebody that I admire in the way he does business. Of course, there's some folks who take his this is Joe Arpaio in Maricopa County.
Oh, I agree. He's tough. Maybe you
You
can
know,
put some
but
tents up.
there does come up. Well,
I'll
that's
help you
about
throw
where
them.
we are with the jail, I think, anyway. But now, one thing about that jail situation. Now, one of the problems that we have is the fact that this, as James stated before, it's been years since our folks got an equitable increase. Right now, if a sheriff's deputy walks out of the sheriff's department and goes to the city of LaGrange Police Department, you're talking about $8,000 a year increase. Is that about right?
About $3 an hour.
Well, what my thought is,
And-
people want to volunteer all the time. Why not get a group of select citizens of Troup County who are willing to volunteer to make these things happen? See if somebody's willing to work to see if there's a grant
Well, it's not the
to
same thing.
do some of the things.
The answer to that, Ms. Bagley, is the same thing that you see tonight. You had 3 or 4 folks that were gonna be on our panel and they just didn't show up. But
Yeah, but the 2 people that did's rip roaring.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
maybe there's some other rip roarers out
And
there.
I totally agree with that. But that's just like, and the reason we don't have raises is because of the tax structure in the county. Right now, there's no money, or that's what I'm told, to fund these things. That's just like an extra pot at the jail. If we're able to build an extra pot, I think we probably built most of that with confiscated money, did we not?
But some was confiscated.
All right, but we can't get the money we can't use confiscated money to man the thing. Now, we could put those 100 folks back there, but it would be even, it would take 3 guys, I think about 3 to a pod.
What about grant money again, though?
Well, let me interject this right here. Because we've already got trustees back there, we've already got people back there. That's my point.
Yeah.
We've already got officers back there, because you gotta have officers back there when you're housing the trustees. So why not move them back there? Can I just, and I'm gonna let you jump back in it and finish up, but let me just address what you're saying about raising our own food and everything. As he said, mandates have come down now to where the food has to be a certain temperature
I
when
understand
the
that.
inmates are fed. You know, the sales have to be a certain temperature. Everything is so mandated now without any funds to help us. It'd be wonderful if we said, you get out there and plant the garden, and if it doesn't grow, you don't eat. But you gotta also remember this, a lot of people that are in jail and they haven't gone to court yet. So, what does the law say? You're innocent until proven guilty.
I'm not talking about using you've got those trustees sitting there.
Right, but what I'm saying is, even if they're a trustee and they haven't gone to court yet, they're innocent until proven guilty. You can't make an innocent man get out and work. That's why on the side of the road now, you've got inmates from the prison camp that are state prisoners and that are county prisoners. And we've got, if they're in jail and they're sentenced to county time, they're sent up to the county prison
I understand.
to do their time
What
up
about the
there.
100 he's talking about sitting there that's not going down the road?
Those state inmates are waiting to go to Jackson. I think it would personally be, and I'll let Clay respond to this, if I was sheriff and somebody's got 20 years for burglary, I would be scared to let them out to go work in a garden in
Well,
case.
something like that, yeah.
Because see,
I
what
agree.
you gotta do, not only have you got your officers that are on the road that are designated, you've got your jailers in the jail that are designated. If you had this program going on, which is a good program in
How did we
theory,
do it years ago?
well, you would have to have officers out there, so that's even more staff we would have to provide. I'm not trying to shoot down
Yeah, I know.
your theory, I'm just saying, when you look at the whole picture, it's great, but it would be very hard to implement,
we've gotta-
especially with our mandates.
We've got to all work together to try different ideas. And if something does not work today, it may well work tomorrow, or a shoot may come off of that.
Exactly, and I want to say this, with volunteers, I think it's
Right.
wonderful. I think we need volunteers, but again, keep this in mind. If you're a jailer, you have to be mandated. If you're a deputy, you have to be mandated.
Yeah, I'm not talking about those
Now,
positions.
you can have people that work in the front office, and we have had, that answer the phones and do stuff, but anything that's GCIC regulated, they can't see that. That's privileged information. So there's very few things that a volunteer can do other than answer the phone or
Well,
do
they
some
could work
clerical
on
work.
grants. Maybe you'd have somebody who,
Sure,
from
they
the
could-
college,
they
maybe
could help
somebody
in-
from the college who'd like to come out.
Right.
We've just got about 8 minutes left, so I'd like to give Mr. Clark a chance to ask one more question.
Very simple question. Throughout this conversation, you two seem to agree on a lot. You have the same vision and ideas. What do you disagree on? What separates, why should you be elected, not just personality-wise, but what philosophical difference or vision difference do you have different from James and vice versa on why you want to be sheriff?
I'm a law and order guy, and I think James is too. However, I believe this, that the first mission of the Troup County Sheriff's Office is the safety and security of the folks in this county. I have a vision that I believe that we need to fulfill as Chief Law Enforcement Officer of this county, that I need to reevaluate and prioritize where we need to spend our law enforcement dollars. The simple truth is, as I stated before, there's only so many pieces of pie or water in the well, and we've got to stay within that. However, if we can do this, if we can become a more professional, first thing we're going to do is get people to buy into a program. And it's hard to do that when you don't have, financially, you can't compete with other people. But you're going to have to get some good people to buy into your program. We're going to have to become more professional and more productive. We need to, our investigators need to have a better clearance rate. There's no reason in Troup County that we don't traffic patrol. Right now, our state court revenue is down over half of what it was a couple of years ago, because the state patrol was left to do all the work in traffic patrol, basically. And now that they're so much thinner, there's nobody left to do it. And we need to do that. Our guys we need to produce. We need to be a more professional outfit. We need to train better. And until we show the improvement that I feel that I intend to bring to the Troup County Sheriff's Office as a professional law enforcement agency. Until we show that improvement, it's gonna be hard to sell the fact to the folks in this county that we need money, we need equipment, we need other things to make us better. The first thing we've got to do is start to become better. And as a sheriff in this county, that's what I intend to do. We will become a more effective and efficient and professional law enforcement entity.
I think the thing that separates me from Mr. Bryant is the fact that I have dedicated my entire career to the sheriff's office. I started out at the bottom, jailer, deputy. I've answered the calls, I've written the reports, I've made the arrests, supervisor in the patrol division. I know what those men and women are supposed to be doing on a daily basis. I have been the public information officer. I've actually been the one that's talked to the media. I've been the one that's gone to the neighborhood watches, Crime Stoppers. I've taught the junior deputy program in all 13 elementary schools. I know the value of that. I know the value of the CHAMPS program, which used to be the DARE program that I want to see put back in the school system. I've worked in the jail. I was a jail administrator. Not when it was in this condition. I was one that went back there daily in that jail, visited with my people, heard their concerns. You didn't have all these broken door locks and windows knocked out and stuff like that when I was a jail administrator. I've been was chief deputy for 4 years. I've worked on the budget. I've done the hiring and the firing and the promoting and demoting and transferring. I know what it takes to run that sheriff's office from top to bottom. I have been there. I started there. I've dedicated my entire career to the sheriff's office. That's why I feel like I would be the best choice for that position, because I know it inside and out. I know everything that goes on behind the scenes that has to happen. I do agree with him, and I've said from the very beginning, we have got to have more training. The only training that our officers are getting right now usually is in-house, and that's just what's required by the state. I am committed, and Scott can probably tell you in the forums that we've had before and other forums, I want to cross-train with other agencies. LaGrange Police Department, I've met with the chief. Hogansville Police Department, West Point Police Department. I want to cross-train with these agencies so that we can communicate better when we have an incident. We can work better together. That's what I'm all about. I'm about serving the people of Troup County. I'm about being accessible, and I believe I'm the best candidate for this position.